Hello everybody and welcome back. Today we're talking about the consolidation and maintenance of power, use of legal methods. So just as a reminder and a refresher, when we're talking about consolidation, we're talking about the action of, or process of combining several things into a single, more effective or coherent whole. So in this case, it's power. It's taking all these people who have a little bit of power, taking it away from them so that all of it comes down to that I or Mao holds them all. Now, maintenance is the process of maintaining and preserving something or someone, right? So now that Mao grabbed and took and has all of it in his hand, how is he going to keep it, right? Now, today, more especially, we are talking about the legal methods and the way and manner of doing something related to the law of society. So how did Mao legally consolidate, bring all the power to him, and maintain that power? So because of that, today we're talking about two very interesting examples. The first example we're going to be talking about is the structure of the government. How did Mao structure the government so that all of the power came into him? A great example of this is this photo right here. If you notice, all of these men here are voting using their right hand. But if you look carefully, most of them are looking towards each other. And Mao is looking at specific people right here. He's giving a very lasered focus, whereas everyone else is kind of trying to figure out who or how everyone else is voting. And this is going to be alluded more into the structure of the government. Now, the next example is the 1954 Constitution. So this is going to be really interesting considering the fact that Mao comes to power in 1950, but his country is going to go through 4 years without any constitution, without any sort of leadership. It's going to take a while before it all catches up. So, how did Mao structure the government to consolidate his power? Well, according to Mao, this is how the power worked. You had the peasants and the workers who held all of the power. The peasants and the workers were in charge of everything. It was up to them to tell the local government and the legal system what to do. And then the legal system and the local government told the People's Liberation Army, the military, what to do. And then the military told the National People's Congress, which is the equivalent of our Senate, which is the equivalent of our Congress. The military told them what to do, at which point they told the Politburo. Now that's a very interesting word that we probably have never engaged with prior. So the Politburo, what this is a organization or a group of the select few people who traditionally have power over everything. So you can think of this as an inner circle. So that, sure, everyone controls some sort of power, but in reality, all the power is being held by these groups, by these select men, these select individuals. So according to Mao, if you were to ask him, how is your government run? What's the way that your government actually works? This is exactly the system he's going to tell you. That it's the peasants and and all the power works down, not up. So this is saying that to stick with communism, this is what's going to happen. This is how his government's going to work. Except that wasn't actually the case. The case of the way the government actually worked was more like this, where Mao was at the top. He had power over everyone and everything. Which is why, if you look at the way this diagram is, it kind of goes down, has a little bit of shoot off, and then shoots off this way, right? Mao holds everything. Every bit of power. Now, Mao is a member of the Politburo, the member of those small inner circle who controls everything. So if anything was to happen, Mao can tell the Politburo what to do. But more accurately, what ends up happening is the Politburo wait to get Mao's opinion on something. So if something is to come up through this chain, the Politburo says, okay, so this is the problem we're dealing with. I wonder what the best situation is. And then they'll turn and look at Mao and wait for him to say something. And then whatever he says, okay, that's what we're doing. So although they were in charge of everything, they all paid heed to Mao. Which is why, as I mentioned in the previous video, when he steps away from the government, then all of the responsibility falls on the Politburo. So let's move down the government, how the chain works. So Mao makes and has all the power. From there, Mao can tell the Politburo what to do and how to run things. If Mao is not there, then it's the Politburo's job, the chairman, who would then tell the National People's Congress and the People's Liberation Army. So the military and the National People's Congress were two separate entities that were equal to each other. They did not answer to each other, they were equal to each other. But they always threatened each other. Because at the end of the day, this equal share of power is still less power or still a competition to try to be better in the eyes of Mao. From there, it kind of breaks off. Where because of Mao's use of the military as a punishment system, the use of the military as law enforcement and police, the legal system, the courts, the police, the federal police, any form of anything that has to do with crime and justice, or the legality of a election or something like that, falls onto the army. So the local government then has to carefully navigate between what the National People's Congress is saying and what the legal system is saying, because they know they don't want to mess with the PLA. So we have Mao, who has all power. We have the chairman and the Politburo, who have some power. We have the National People's Congress, also known as the Political Commissar, and the People's Liberation Army, called the military commanders, who then tell the local government, or also known as the party secretaries, what to do. And all of this falls onto the workers. So if Mao sees something that happens here, everyone up the chain is getting in trouble. Everyone up the chain is getting essentially almost imprisoned and possibly executed, depending on the severity of it. All of these people here paid all power to Mao. So if whatever he said, whatever he wanted, whatever he decided to do, that was what it was going to be. And it didn't matter if Mao was in the room. Because if these people did something, these people are going to try to hide it. These people are going to try to hide it so that these people don't see it. And if they do see it, they're going to try to make sure he does it. And it never works. It never works. Mao finds out eventually because of just how much the people loved him. Now, the way this system works, and the reason why in the first 4 years between 1950 and 1954 there was no central government, was because Mao was carefully selecting who his inner circle was, and then they were carefully selecting these people below him, except everyone below them had to be approved by Mao. Now that Mao has carefully set up a system to ensure everyone knows who owes their power to, Mao can then say, all right, it's time for us to legitimize our government. So in 1954, he decides time to institute a constitution, time to legitimize our government. And this comes at a very interesting time. And a lot of the things that Mao says in this constitution that people approve of and vote on and agree to, of them, there are a couple of examples or a couple of articles that I do want to highlight. Because the majority of the 1954 Constitution is just legitimizing the system we just talked about. It just took all of the power that Mao had and the entire layout of how he wanted the government to be, and then wrote it in a piece of paper to set it in stone. But he did add some things to there that are important. The first thing he added to this was a marriage law. In this marriage law, he wrote and gave women rights that they have never experienced in China prior to this. So this marriage law essentially raised the age of consent so that now a woman would have to be 18, or a man would have to marry a woman that's a minimum age of 18. He then legalized divorce. Divorce wasn't an option prior to this. So in 1954, he approves divorce. And what's interesting about this divorce case is if you were married under duress, if you were married or forced into a marriage or sold off to be a part of a marriage, right? Your father and your neighbor decides, well, you're going to marry their son in exchange for a piece of land. That's under duress. That is non-consensual marriage. In this divorce law, Mao gives a time period where it says, hey, if you are married under any of these circumstances, your divorce is free. And needless to say, divorces spiked because that was quite a unfortunately popular thing to do. And the last thing in the 1954 Constitution for marriage was that women were given fair and equal laws, which means they could own their own property. They could marry whoever they wanted. They could divorce whoever they wanted. They could do and run anything of their choice. And this gave women a whole new sense and almost immediately made Mao one of the most popular figures, if he wasn't already popular enough. 50% of the population immediately switched over and said, this guy is actually treating me like an equal. This guy will forever have my support. The next thing that he implemented in the 54 Constitution was property law. He essentially said, all right, we have between 200 and 240 million acres of land that is privately owned. We're going to go ahead and take all that land away and redistribute it. So we're going to take all of this land that we couldn't find prior, that was under power of the nationalists or held somewhere else. We're going to take it, and if anyone stands up against us, we're going to kill him. Take that land and redistribute it completely. Thus, again, proving to the people that he is sticking to his word. That everyone is going to get property and that women were going to get rights. And then the next thing, the last thing in the 54 Constitution is the nature of the state. In here, he sketches out and writes out a full structure of how the state is going to be run. And all of that is just legitimizing the fact that he now holds all the power in the country. Everything comes to him and him alone. So when he decides later on to walk away from the country, walk away from the state, he still has all that power and he can come and go as he pleases. Because now, according to the 54 Constitution, that is all he's got. That is all he needs. Everything now legally is his. And all of the peasants, because of the new property law, are in favor of this. Hey, he's doing what he said he was going to do for me. Now I have land and I've never owned land for the past 7 generations. Hey, I can now divorce and have liberties and freedoms that I've never had prior to this. So, even if you were a landowner or a male against women's rights, you kind of didn't have a choice. The country said, this is what we're doing. Mao said, equality for all, both land and rights. This is it. If you have a problem, we'll talk about it.